Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following everything going on with PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. I'm Damon Hatfield, and as always, I'm joined by Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox podcast, Podcast Unlocked.
Happy holidays, Damon.
Happy holidays to you as well. And joining us this week from Podcast Beyond is Colin Stevens. Welcome back, Colin.
Happy to be here.
And this episode, it's our final episode of the year. This is actually the last thing that I'm filming for IGN in this year, the year of our Lord 2022. And we're going to be looking ahead and sharing our hopes and dreams for the future, for the next year, for both of these platforms. PS5, Xbox Series X. This is the time of year when miracles happen. So we're just going to put it out there. We're going to put our hopes and dreams out there for these platforms in the new year and hope that they come true. And actually, I think both sides are in a really interesting position going into 2023 because, Ryan, Microsoft has a lot of promised games that we've been waiting on for a long time. And one of our big hopes is that these games finally start coming out. But then, Colin, on the PlayStation side, we're actually at a point where we don't know a lot about what PS has in store. Of course, they're launching PSVR 2 early in the year. But beyond that, there is no PlayStation first-party game with a release date. So very interesting point in both of these platforms' lives. Right, well, let's just go around the room. This is going to be very casual. Ryan, what's one of your big hopes for 2023?
Well, the elephant in the room is the Activision Blizzard deal. So I hope to get some resolution on that in 2023 because that might not happen now that the FTC is involved and has filed suit against Microsoft. It could be a year of just legal muck. But I hope that it gets resolved, and I do hope it goes through for Microsoft, not because I'm looking for any sort of fanboy exclusive stuff, because Microsoft's already said, hey, Call of Duty, it's going, we'll put it on Switch, we'll put it on PlayStation, Sony can put it on PS Plus if they want, but I would just like that to go through for Microsoft for Game Pass, because then Diablo 4 goes into Game Pass, Call of Duty goes into Game Pass, so there are tangible benefits for Xbox gamers if this deal goes through for Microsoft. If it doesn't, that's a whole other episode that we'll do of this show when the time comes. But yeah, that's number one on my list is I hope that gets resolved, and I hope it resolves in favor of Microsoft.
Yeah, I guess I'm out of morbid curiosity. I hope it goes through because it would be such a tectonic shift, such a change in the status quo of the industry that we've been covering for years and years and years.
And quite frankly, for the we can't ignore, not that we're ignoring it, but the news cycle moves on. The toxicity at the leadership of Activision Blizzard, that hasn't all gone away. It's the codec's still there. These people are still there. If Microsoft is allowed to take control of that company, I fully expect serious changes to be made from the top on down at that company, which will hopefully lead to a more equitable, more fair, just better workplace for everyone at Activision Blizzard.
Yes, for sure. Okay, Colin, how about you? What's a big hope that you have for PlayStation in 2023? Not even necessarily PlayStation.
The last 2.5 years, there's been a lot of game delays. And a lot of it obviously was caused by the pandemic. But I think we're finally in a pretty good place. Most studios that were already in studio before the pandemic are back in and working full force on games. And so my hope is that we just don't really get many delays from the things that already do have dates or windows. Forspoken, I still expect it to come out in January. Horizon Call of the Mountain and PlayStation VR 2, those should both still be coming out in February. I think that'll hit its mark. Burning Shores, the Horizon DLC, that should still be coming out in April. Final Fantasy 16 in June. That's one of the games I'm absolutely most excited about next year. I fully believe that'll hit that mark because a year ago, Square Enix said that it was basically in a complete state and they were just polishing it for a year. So if that doesn't hit its mark, I don't know what will. Spider-Man 2 in the fall. And then Square, again, really being the MVP for Sony of third parties. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is the second of the Final Fantasy remake games. They have initially announced it for late 2023 or early 2024. However, as someone who's been following Square Enix for a long time, I give it like a 0% chance of coming out in 2023. So that's the one.
0%.
I'll give it a 1%. I'll give it a 1% chance just to have a tiny margin. First off, having two huge Final Fantasy games that close to each other seems a little bit silly. But yeah, I would expect that to come out in maybe mid 2024. That's my expectation for that.
And in terms of Sony first party stuff, PSVR 2, Horizon, Burning Shores, and Spider-Man 2, you think that's it? You think that's going to be this whole slate for the year?
I think we're going to get at least one more game out of Sony that year. I don't know what it would be exactly, but I do expect them to announce more things for next year. For this year, for 2022, we never really got a big PlayStation first-party showcase, on like an E3 level. We got a really big third-party one, which was great, and I loved it. But they've been pretty quiet on the first-party announcement front for a long time. I think that Sony Bend is due for an announcement of a game. Last we heard, they are not making a Days Gone sequel, but they are working on something new and something that sort of builds off of the open world stuff that they did with Days Gone. So I expect that to be announced next year. Potentially Bluepoint, which was acquired by PlayStation last year. The last game they made was Demon Souls remake. They have announced that they are working on a brand new IP. So since it's a brand new IP, instead of a remake, I think it might take a little bit longer. I do not expect it to come out next year, but I think they could announce something next year. And then Ghost of Tsushima 2. I don't know if they would still call it Ghost of Tsushima. I expect them to sort of move on, maybe to mainland Japan. Maybe call it Ghost of Nippon. That would be cute. Maybe it wouldn't get good name recognition though. I don't know. I think that game came out in 2020, and then in 2021 they did the Iki Island expansion. So I think they could be in a place to announce that game. I certainly don't expect it to come out next year, but I think they could easily announce a sequel to Ghost of Tsushima. And then the last sort of big question mark is the Last of Us multiplayer game. Originally, it was supposed to come out in 2020, along with The Last of Us Part 2. And obviously it never did. So it's just been gestating for a very long time. I think that they're going to try to align that with the Last of Us TV show, which comes out just next month. I think maybe by the time that show wraps up, maybe they'll try to sort of incorporate some sort of, synergistic marketing to get some hype around the Last of Us multiplayer game going. But I think it would be too early to hear anything first party out of Naughty Dog, or not first party, my apologies, single player out of Naughty Dog at this point in time.
I'm sorry, did you mention Wolverine?
Wolverine, thank you.
Is that one too?
I think we could see more of Wolverine next year. Obviously, Insomniac has already put their flag in the ground for fall of 2023 with Spider-Man 2.
Right.
But I don't think Wolverine is nearly as far along. I think that game will probably come out in 2024, but I think maybe even seeing some gameplay I think is possible next year for Wolverine.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And 2024 also feels right for Wolverine to me. Now, you mentioned E3. E3 is supposed to return next year. Ryan, would you say one of your hopes is that E3 can really return to form?
Took the words out of my mouth, Damon. Absolutely. I adore E3. I've been very lucky to go to a lot of them. I'm not sure how many it is at this point. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I just have a ball at E3. I mean, it's our Super Bowl week in the games industry. It's our Christmas morning when we get a bunch of presents from all the major publishers to unwrap. And it's just a ball. You get to see, for those of us lucky enough to get to go, you get to see industry colleagues and developers that you don't get to see on a regular basis. And watching all the press conferences is so much fun. And getting all the new game announcements is a blast. So I am happy that E3 is attempting to return this year. I hope it's able to recapture its former glory and just become something that the mainstream press talks about. I mean, you remember, Damon, it used to be like USA Today would cover the big E3 announcements, and they really wouldn't say much about video games the rest of the year. And not that we should, not that we're really looking at newspapers anymore in 2022, but the point is, it's just like it's a big cultural moment, or it can be for the games industry, and for so many reasons, I just hope we're able to get back to that.
Yeah, agreed. Are there any other for Ryan? Are there any other Xbox specific hopes you have for the new year?
Oh, I've got plenty. Certainly. I mean, for one, I think id Software is due to announce a new project, maybe even ship it by the end of the year, because Doom Eternal we're coming up on 3 years. It was Doom Eternal and Animal Crossing were the two games that came out right when the lockdown started in mid-March. So it's been just about 3 years. Yes, there were a couple of DLCs for Doom in there as well, but even if they're not ready to actually ship something, it certainly feels like time to announce a new id Software game. I hope it's a single player focused Quake reboot, similar to what id did with Doom. I would be thrilled to see that. I mean, id Software has these 3 major IPs in Doom, Quake, and Wolfenstein. I don't think we'll be seeing Rage again anytime soon, but I think the odds of it being a Quake game are higher than it being a new IP. Now, if it's a new IP, great. We'll see what new stuff id wants to come up with. But I think after what they did with Doom, they could really do a tremendous job of reimagining Quake. Perhaps even in the image of the original kind of medieval fantasy game that it was envisioned as before it kind of evolved into the game. It's a classic game that we ended up getting. But yeah, I think it is due, and I think it's probably going to be an Xbox exclusive, and that could be a serious, awesome shooter in Microsoft's back pocket that they can at least reveal to the world this year, perhaps even ship it by the fall. You never know.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Colin, we were just talking about E3. Of course, Sony has not been participating in the most recent E3s. Would you like to see them make a return to the actual big show instead of doing their own thing?
I mean, you guys were talking about E3 returning to form, and I think the only way that it truly gets back to the place that it was is to have all 3 of the big console makers there. I think you don't get the same level of hype if it's just 2 of the 3. So I think somehow, if they manage to convince PlayStation to come back to E3 next year, that's how I think that it's like all cylinders, all engines going. There's nothing quite like sort of the feeling of, it gets a little bit console fanboyish, but just like who had the best E3, who had the best showcase, it becomes sort of a thing of one-upsmanship. And I think that's just kind of good for the industry, just from a hype standpoint. The last couple of years, it's been a little dull, during the summers. Well, we have some great things, some great events, Summer of Gaming, Summer Game Fest, all this stuff, but it's not the same as it was before the pandemic happened and before PlayStation left E3. So I really think in order to get E3 to where it was at, PlayStation's got to come back. I don't know how it's going to happen. I just desperately hope that it does.
Yeah, I would like to see it too. Okay, we're starting to run out of time. Any last minute hopes for you, Ryan?
I want to crowbar in a couple more here. First of all, I hope that 2023 is the year where anyone who wants a next-gen console, regardless of who's making it, can walk into any major retailer or click onto any major online retailer and just order one without any hassle. I mean, we are now in year 3 of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series consoles. I really hope the supply situation finally resolves once and for all. And then speaking of next-gen consoles, Damon, I know we don't get to talk Nintendo much, but we're all Nintendo fans here. I want to see not just a next-gen Switch announcement in 2023, because it's time. We're coming up on the 6-year anniversary of the Switch. We're past Switch Pro. It's got to be the Switch 2, or I would call it the Super Switch.
I like it.
At this point, I think that's the name we got to go with if we're Nintendo. But not only do I want that next-gen Super Switch announcement, but I hope that the mainline Mario team is working on a day one next-gen Mario for that platform.
Yes.
We got Zelda day one, Breath of the Wild day one for the Switch. The Mario team shipped Odyssey 5 years ago, Damon. It's been a long time. So it's assuming, that we're not getting a new Nintendo in 2023, but maybe it gets announced and it's out in 2024. I would be over the moon if those two things came together.
Yep. Yeah, agreed. And speaking of crowbar, I think we'd all like to see Half-Life Alyx make it to PSVR 2.
Yeah.
The greatest VR game ever made by a mile. It's not even close.
It's not even debatable. yeah, my last big hope for PlayStation in 2023 is I don't want PSVR 2 to flop. There's not very much fanfare going into the year, and what I think needs to happen is one of the easiest wins for them is to get a port of Half-Life Alyx. It's one of those
just
games.
pay Valve, like just pay, I mean, Sony is not shy about throwing around money to third-party developers to get games exclusive to their platform.
Mm-hmm.
Alyx is the perfect thing to spend some money on.
Yeah, and then on top of that, Team Asobi, we haven't heard from them since they made. It was Astro's Playroom. I always get them mixed up. Astro's Playroom that launched with PS5. I think that we're due for something from them, and they have a lot of experience on the original PSVR, so I think that we could get something from them. I'd really like to see some Dreams integration, too. We haven't heard anything from Media Molecule in a long time, and I think that would be something that would be really cool, especially since the controllers on the PSVR 2 are so much better than the Move controllers from... What year did those even come out?
From the PS3.
Yeah,
that's enough said.
Yeah, so I think those there could be some really good support for Dreams if they manage to integrate it into the PSVR 2. So those are some things that I think would help it not flop.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to throw my own hope for the new year in here. My hope, my dream for 2023 is that we get some sign of life for Perfect Dark from Xbox.
Amen.
And it's the Initiative. Is that right, Ryan?
Yes,
indeed.
indeed.
And Crystal Dynamics has been called in to help with them, and I love what Crystal Dynamics did with the recent Tomb Raider trilogy. I love Perfect Dark. I think it's super playable today on Game Pass. That 2009 or 2010 HD remake was super, super good. Love that game. Can't wait to hear more. Okay, we have the results of last episode's poll. We've been talking about our hopes and dreams for the new year. And last week, that was the question we put forth to you. We asked, what are your biggest hopes for in 2023? And perhaps surprisingly, perhaps not, the number one response was a next-gen Nintendo Switch. That was followed by Spider-Man 2 arriving before year's end, Starfield and Redfall actually making it out by June, Microsoft completing the Activision Blizzard acquisition, and E3 returning in full form. So Ryan and Colin are very much in line with the IGN viewership on what we're
plugged right in
the new year. Love to see it. A new poll for you to vote on, although we are going to be taking next week off. We'll be coming back in the new year. But we want to know who had the strongest year in 2022, PlayStation, Xbox, or Nintendo. Make sure to vote at IGN.com, and we'll share the results with you next year, because this is us signing off for Next Gen Console Watch in 2022. Thank you so much for watching the show for another year.
We're still doing this, Damon.
We're still doing it. This was supposed to end, originally conceived. This show was supposed to run up to the launch of PS5 and Xbox Series X and send them off for the celebration and then end the run of the show. But you all out there, you keep watching it. And now we're trapped. We have to keep making the show for you. I kid. It is a pleasure to make the show.
It is.
It's very fun. And I look forward. 2023 is going to be a really exciting year for games. I don't know if anyone has noticed, there are a lot of games scheduled to come out next year. So should be a lot to play, a lot to have fun with and talk about. So thank you to both Ryan and Colin. Thank you to Marian working behind the scenes to make this episode possible. My name is Damon. We'll be back with more Next Gen Console Watching in the new year. Happy holidays, everyone.